fundamental question for us is what is our involvement in it and who ought to look at it. And the Intelligence Committee is already looking at Russian involvement in our election. As Senator Blunt has indicated, it's highly likely they'd want to take a look at this episode as well. They have the broad jurisdiction to do it. And any questions as to why the president did what he did ought to be directed to the White House.
Now that, of course, is a Republican head of the U.S. Senate, Mitch McConnell, saying Senate probes of Flynn's contact with the Russians are highly likely. As you also know, there's that parallel investigation by the FBI that is already investigating this. Now, Democrats, however, say that's not going far enough. They want an independent, or for that matter, a special prosecutor to probe it. They do not want Attorney General Jeff Sessions involved, as they want this to be totally independent. I want to bring in our legal panel to weigh in at this. Amy Dardashian. Amy's an attorney, legal analyst, Emmy award-winning journalist. The other three guys here can't say that. Doug Von Oist, the founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct, and selected by the Legal 500 as most influential trial lawyers in the country. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And Mark Furnish, adjunct professor at the Elizabeth Haub School of Law at Pace University, and he has argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay, first off, as it relates to General Flynn, forget about the misinformation that I heard today saying that it's the fake media who drove him out, when it was insisted yesterday at the press conference by his own press secretary that Trump demanded his resignation. It wasn't so much as offered, and his security
credentials aren't mutually exclusive, obviously.
No, they made the point to rebut the thing that Flynn offered. They said that Trump demanded it. Anyway,
he demanded it because of the media pressure.
Well, and also maybe because he lied.
Not mutually exclusive.
And let's talk a little bit about that. There's the Logan Act, which says you basically can't have two presidents at the same time here, and you can't have somebody basically making representations to being the government, which Flynn apparently did. And there is more than 9 different sources saying that when he talked to his Russian counterparts after President Obama was ready to put sanctions down, after all of our intelligence agencies confirmed that Russia did in fact meddle and hack the DNC and got involved in our elections, at the same time he had a conversation with his Russian counterpart saying, don't worry about him, that won't really happen.
No, there's no evidence that he ever said that. The FBI,
then you're the first person I think who doesn't
has
believe it actually
conclusively said that there's no evidence that he even did a wink and a nod that the sanctions were going to be lifted. There's evidence that he discussed the sanctions with them, but there is absolutely nothing reported anywhere that says he promised them implicitly or explicitly that the sanctions would be rolled back.
Then, Mark, let me ask you a practical
question.
question.
We don't know what was said.
Well, we do know that
Mike
Pence,
the FBI said that.
We do know that Mike Pence definitively went out on Face the Nation and said no talk of any sanctions took place under the guidance from Mike Flynn that he never had any conversation about sanctions. So he lied to the vice president, let alone to the American public.
Yes.
Okay. Secondarily, in addition to the Logan Act, which says you can't do this, they also say there's a crime of making false statements.
The Logan Act has never been invoked in a criminal prosecution in almost 225 years.
Mark,
so
okay, but
it's never going to be invoked.
How about making false statements in Mayo? When it's a federal law, okay, and like you said, it still is in the federal code.
Never been invoked in almost 250 years.
When there's an intent to deceive.
He's talking about false statements, Mark.
Yes, a government agency about an important matter.
They'd have to be material.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Rich.
Yes, thank you. About making false statements intending to deceive a government agency about an important matter.
Material matter.
Well, but we have to take a step back. And when we start talking about material matters, you go and look at Martha Stewart. Okay, so Martha Stewart went to prison for something that was deemed to be material.
Because she lied about potential stock fraud violations.
Again, to Amy's point, we really at this point don't know what was said. We are led to believe that there may be wiretaps, and presumably there's a lot more than what we've been told. But if there is anything material, then absolutely this is something that could lead to criminal charges. It could lead to incarceration. And then there's even a possibility, depending on what else is said, that...
And that's a perfect segue, Mayo, about what else, okay? Because tomorrow, coincidentally, I'm dealing with an event with New Jersey lawmakers starting in Newark, going all the way down to D.C. And one of the people that I'll come across, hopefully, is Tom Kean. Now, Tom Kean, Sr., was, among other things, in addition to being the former governor of New Jersey, part of the 9/11 Commission. And I would think out of one of our darkest days, in addition to the resilience in this country, one of the things that I was extremely proud of was that commission. It was a nonpartisan commission. Kaine, a Republican, Hamilton, a Democrat, Hamilton, a former representative from Indiana, Kaine, as mentioned, a former governor of New Jersey. There was no partisanship. There was transparency. They investigated. They asked questions. They had full subpoena power. There wasn't even the impression, let alone the reality, that people were driving who they were allowed to talk to, what they could do and what they couldn't. Point is, with everything that's circling, and I have said for the better part of a year, watch Russia. It made no sense to anyone, and reportedly to the intelligence agencies, the continued defense of Putin and the atrocities that have happened under his guidance here, the not unending support from one Donald Trump about it. Reportedly because of that.
Barack Obama's support for Russia in Syria when he outsourced the job of removing chemical weapons to Putin.
Don't even try that line of baloney.
Oh, no.
The point, though, is...
Well, the invasion of Crimea certainly happened without consequence under Obama.
Pull this back. No. There's a national interest articulated by the Grahams and the McCains and the Sasses in the Senate and other Republicans saying, at this point, no one can trust Trump about what did or didn't happen with Russia during the course of the campaign and to present day. I believe we need an independent prosecutor, but at the very least, you need a bipartisan commission. You can't have one political party running this.
Here's the thing. When it comes to a special prosecutor, so a big question here is, was he a government employee at the time? And he was obviously part of the transition team, right? And during the transition...
I'm not limiting this just to Flynn.
Right.
I'm saying including the current president of the United States.
If you want a special prosecutor, they are tasked with investigating people who are holding office, misdeeds in office. If these people did not qualify as being in office, if power had not transferred to them during that transition, a special prosecutor cannot investigate them. If it did, if power did transfer to them, they didn't violate the Logan Act because they weren't private individuals.
Leaving the Logan Act, because that's currently what we're talking about, Flynn.
But that's the question.
The call for an independent prosecutor broadly about Russia, and we should mention right now, the FBI actively investigating this with or without Congress, is the following. A crime was committed when people hacked into our election. Now, you can say that there was foreign entities that were involved, but if an American was involved with a hacking of a duly committed election here, that's a crime. Moreover, people like Paul Manafort and whatever else. What did we learn today? There was continued conversation, we don't know the details of it, from the Trump campaign throughout the entire campaign process to present day with Russian operatives very familiar to the intelligence agencies.
Well, who ordered it? That's the
exactly.
thing. Is he a fall guy? Did he get the commands from Trump, from Pence? Who ordered
There's
it?
absolutely no evidence that Trump even knew about
Well, it
it.
doesn't necessarily
Well,
have
that's
to
why
be
we need an
involved, but you have to-
investigation, Mark.
If you look at the fact that Donald
no
Trump
problem with
suggested there were
investigation.
over 3 million illegitimate votes cast, and that he's suggesting that he would have had a popular vote victory as well, I think that certainly if there is the possibility that someone in Trump's campaign participated in sabotaging the election through working with any foreign entity, it should be investigated. And I think the sooner you do that, the better.
But
And
let's
if
talk
you
how.
show that
If we all
that didn't
agree there
occur,
should be an investigation.
if you're able to show it didn't occur, then it benefits Donald Trump, and then we can move forward and
Here's
allow
the
him
thing
to
about
govern.
the how. The independent counsel statute lapsed in 1999. There is no Office of Independent Counsel anymore. It doesn't exist. It's under the aegis of the Attorney General, the Justice Department. Now, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, Sessions can appoint within the Justice Department from the Office of Special Counsel somebody to conduct the investigation, and he can bow out of the investigation. But to say that there's going to be a truly independent prosecutor outside of the Attorney General's office,
me ask a
there's
practical
no
question.
federal
Let
mechanism
me ask you
for
a
that
practical
right now.
question, hypothetical, so no one has a heart attack. Right. It has been reported that dossier that apparently the British agent had put together, not the salacious details that got leaked. I'm talking about what originally was presented. McCain moved it up the food chain and everything else does. If it turns out there's credibility, which is what rumors are going on in the intelligence community that there was, and let's not forget, the acting Attorney General almost a month ago went to the White House and said Mike Flynn could be subject to blackmail.
No, it was like January 25th. Come on.
Mark, my
That's not
God, you're
almost
making it worse.
That's not almost a month
Well,
ago.
put it this way. Trump told us last Friday,
Well,
okay, and I reported it,
Yes.
that he didn't know anything about it.
No, he
okay.
said he didn't know anything about the Washington Post.
Now you're
article.
trying to define
No,
what
no, no,
is,
no.
okay?
No.
Let's-
Here's the thing.
Yes.
I find it a little bit rich that he's notified on January 25th, and what would you have had him done? Fire Flynn on January 26th?
I would have revoked, and I would not have had him sitting in on any national security briefings.
So
yes,
his-
Mark,
so-
that would have been item one.
So his own counsel's office is not entitled to conduct its own investigation that's coming from
They didn't
Sally.
do an investigation.
That's coming from his counsel.
Mark,
White,
time.
Wait,
You're
wait.
inventing fake
No,
news
no, no.
here.
White
What
House
happened is,
counsel Don McCann, or whatever his name is, was notified on January 25th by Sally Yates, a partisan holdover.
let me talk about-
They took 2 weeks
You
to
missed what the
investigate
president
the
said today.
allegations.
The president,
and
when
then
he-
they sacked him
Time out.
because of media pressure.
the president,
What's
no,
wrong
no,
with that?
not sacked
What's
him
wrong
from,
with that?
How about this? Mike Pence said he was lied to.
I understand that.
Okay.
And
Secondly,
Pence wasn't told.
Well, can you let me finish?
Yeah.
Then the president made it clear in yesterday's briefing by Sean
That he's
Spicer
known
that
since
the
January
president
25th.
demanded the resignation
Yes.
and that he was notified before.
January
Go
25th.
back to Friday. The president said that he was never notified about this. Now, the
said he
president said,
hadn't read
wait,
that
allow me to
article
finish.
in the Post.
The president made it clear that he only terminated him not because he lied to his own executive
Right.
branch
Right.
on not one occasion, but two, by the way,
Right.
but he's fired only because
Because
the
of the
media
media pressure.
leaked it.
That's what he said. So that's his view.
And as an American,
I don't
we
care
don't
about
have
it
any
as an
national
American.
security concerns
No,
about a
I have
guy
no national
who's
sec-
lied
no.
and putting out the VP to lie.
Well,
All right.
he fired him, so it's a moot point. What
You
else
just
do you
said he
want?
only fired him because of the media.
That was his choice.
And
to
today he
fire him
said
because of
he
the
was a
media.
good man.
I would have said, I find it disgusting
Okay.
that he lied to
Donald
my
Trump
vice
didn't do
president,
anything
and that
else
bugs him.
because of the media. Just nothing else that the media has
What's
done
the
that
point?
caused Donald Trump to do anything.
But-
In fact,
but
he.
guys,
What's the point? He's
Guys,
gone.
wait, here's the
What's
point.
the end game? What's
Stop.
the end game? That's
Here
what
it
I
is.
want to know.
And I'll try and go to you, Doug, okay?
Because the offender is gone.
Mark. So here's the point. Positively, more is going to come out on this. And I will take bets on anybody.
Well, that's just
Time out.
Mark, you never raised your hand
Yeah,
in
okay.
class, did you?
Never. Okay.
Supposition.
So let me talk
You don't know that.
to the guy with the dark hair. As more leaks out, will there be an inevitability where they can have a partisan investigation, that it's got to be either a bipartisan with an equal number of members with equal subpoena powers, or are they going to have to get an independent prosecutor? Because if nothing else, pressure because of leaks coming from his own administration here are going to make this untenable to go the way it is.
Rich, I got bad news for you. Any high-level prosecution, investigation or prosecution, is going to be deemed as partisan at this point. There's nobody that Jeff Sessions can appoint, and there's no prosecution, there's no investigation that could take place that is going to be both sides coming together to fairly evaluate this.
I'll tell you this much. If George Mitchell, who'd been appointed to do, you know how many special investigations, including even Major League Baseball and the rest, and we got the equivalent of a 9/11 commission, it would. And
That's fantasy, and you know it.
It doesn't even matter
Fiction.
because the Republicans have the majority. So even if there is an investigation,
this is
there's
the word
not.
I know, though. If it becomes toxic
Yes.
and it becomes radioactive, they're not going to want this. And there's a long-term game here. They'd rather have the VP, by the way, as the president than this guy. But that for another day. Coming up next, talk about a pivot or an attempt. Did you know prosecutors can take a person's car, even their cash, and they can do it even if they're not convicted of a thing?